presenting Spider-Man in A Night at the Movies.
Oh, I love these Spider-Man movies. Come on, Spider-Man, don't let the green glob get you.
Yeah, come on, Spider-Man. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man, does whatever a spider can. And the world, anytime, catch a thief, just like flies. Here comes the Spider-Man.
It is 5:28 p.m. on Thursday, July 6, 2017, and I am on my way to the AMC Burbank 16 in beautiful Burbank, California, to catch a 7 p.m. screening of SpiderMan Homecoming. I'm some jerk with a camera, and welcome to One Movie Later, where I compare and contrast my preconceptions and postconceptions of movies in theaters now. Ah, Spider-Man, what a tangled web he weaves. Now, obviously, since almost the beginning of Marvel Comics, Spider-Man has always been their most popular character. He is their Mickey Mouse, their Mario, their Superman, basically. He is the Alpha, the Omega, A to Z. And it always seems like the more complicated the history of a company is, so then the more complicated is the ownership history of their most popular character. And to think it all could have been so much easier because Disney considered buying Marvel as early as the mid-90s. They kicked the tires on it for a while, and ultimately Eisner said, nah, it's just not Disney enough. So instead, a very cash-strapped Marvel was forced to sell off the movie and theme park rights to a bunch of its most famous characters. Fox got the movie rights to X-Men and Fantastic Four, Sony got the movie rights to Spider-Man, and Universal got movie rights to the Hulk and theme park rights to all of the above. Which was very fortuitous for Universal at the time because they'd just seen their Tooniversal Studios plans go up in smoke when Warner Brothers pulled out of the deal, so they didn't have access to DC anymore. But instead, Universal Florida's second gate ended up being Islands of Adventure, and with it came Marvel Superhero Island and the Amazing Adventures of SpiderMan Ride. And the SpiderMan Ride had a brilliant ride concept. It was basically, let's take the vehicles and general concept of Indiana Jones, but instead of traveling through physical sets, you travel up to various video screens in 3D. So it's the Indiana Jones adventure meets Back to the Future the Ride meets Captain EO, essentially. Now that might not seem too impressive today, now that every new e-ticket that opens is pretty much just a combination of already existing technologies, but at the time it was pretty mind-blowing. The ride opened in 1999, which was of course 3 years before the first Spider-Man movie opened. So for its pre-show material, it was forced to rely on the team that had made the Spider-Man animated series that had aired on Fox Kids in the 90s and was canceled over a year before the ride opened. But the ride itself was still absolutely amazing, and of course 3 years later, Sony did release the first ever Spider-Man movie. Directed by Sam Raimi, starring Tobey Maguire. It's pretty easy to forget just how huge it was at the time in this era when just about every huge film is a superhero movie, but yeah, it was so big, it came out the same summer as Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, and it made more money than Star Wars. That was the first time that it ever happened. Every Star Wars movie up to that point had been the highest grossing film of its respected year, until Spidey came along. In 2004, Spider-Man 2 came out, and it was arguably even better. And in 2007, Spider-Man 3 came out, and it was not. I mean, it's not a terrible movie, but it was such a victim of studio meddling. The studio was saying, we need Venom to be in the movie, and Raimi said, I don't want to do Venom. He's boring. It's too bad. We're doing Venom because he looks cool. And Raimi just said, you know what? Screw it. I'm doing a dance sequence. So that ended up being Sam Raimi's last Spider-Man movie, and in the mere 5 years between that and the next attempt at a Spider-Man movie, the entire landscape changed. Marvel was starting up its own movie studio, and in 2008 they released Iron Man, kicking off that grand experiment known as the Marvel Cinematic Universe. In 2009, Disney finally bought Marvel, which worried a lot of people at the time, but I think we can all agree that in the long run, it just gave Marvel a lot more freedom and resources to really pursue this crazy cinematic universe idea. But one group of people who we thought had reason to be nervous was was theme park fans. Because when Disney bought Marvel, we just instantly said, well, that's it for Marvel Superhero Island, that's it for the Amazing Spider-Man ride, ride it while you can. And Universal must have thought so too, at least briefly, because around that same time they were developing the Transformers ride. And they specifically developed it to be dropped into the Spider-Man show building if necessary. It was the exact same ride technology, the exact same ride vehicle designs, the exact same track layout, more or less. Just in case they had to turn Marvel Island into Action Island or something, that ride would not go completely to waste. But that ended up not happening due to backroom legal shenanigans that we will probably never be privy to. Universal was able to keep Marvel, at least on the East Coast. And as a sort of victory party, Universal did two things. They dumped a whole bunch of money into upgrading the CGI in the Spider-Man ride, and they opened Transformers in the other park. We don't need this to fill Spider-Man's shoes anymore. This can be its own thing. Meanwhile, Sony was still under a legal obligation to keep releasing Spider-Man movies, or else the rights would revert back to Marvel. So in 2012, they gave us The Amazing Spider-Man, which I never even saw. I mean, forgive me if this makes me a bad fan or whatever, but it just seemed so unfair to Sam Raimi. Because Sam Raimi wanted to make Spider-Man 4. He was basically forced out of it. And 5 years just seemed like way too short a time for a reboot, regardless of the legal reasons. I mean, say what you will about the DC Extended Universe, but even that doesn't feel like as much of an insult because Christopher Nolan didn't want to make a fourth Dark Knight movie. He arguably didn't even want to make a third one. Anyway, the same summer The Amazing Spider-Man came out, The Avengers came out, and it broke all sorts of box office records and was hailed as this triumph, and it contained a big climactic battle in New York which did not involve the most famous New York-based Marvel superhero. And Sony looked at the grosses on the Avengers and said, you know what, we can do that. We can build our own Amazing Spider-Man cinematic universe based on this character from Marvel Comics, and we can compete against Marvel with a Marvel character. What? To the point where when The Amazing Spider-Man 2 came out in 2014, Sony did the unthinkable and stole Marvel's first weekend of May time slot. You just don't do that. You don't spit on Superman's cape, you don't tug in the wind, you don't cast Johnny Depp in the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with a Marvel movie on the first weekend of May! And guess what? It underperformed. Now again, I've never seen that one either, so I can't really judge it, but I have heard a lot of negative criticism about it, which basically kept me from having any interest in seeing it. And shortly after, someone at Sony realized, you know what, these movies are not making as much money as the Marvel movies with far less well-known characters. Maybe we should just piggyback on Marvel. And 2 years later, lo and behold, Spider-Man showed up in Captain America: Civil War.
Hey everyone.
I like that they unapologetically made Spider-Man a kid. Tom Holland was 19, whereas Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were both in their mid to late 20s when they first played Spider-Man, and you could tell. But I like that Peter Parker is a millennial, unapologetically. He's not the baby boomer kid of the early comics. He's not the emo kid of Amazing Spider-Man. He's not even whatever era the Raimi movies are supposed to take place in. And now, of course, that iteration of Spider-Man is starring in SpiderMan Homecoming. Cheeky title. Get it? Because Marvel is Spider-Man's home and he's coming home. It's homecoming because he's coming home. See, he's coming home. And based on the trailers, it basically looks like it's going to be a high school comedy, but with Spider-Man in it. Just like a John Hughes movie, but one of the kids is Peter Parker. And I guess the question is, will Marvel be able to pull off Adequately Speaking for Millennials without looking like Steve Buscemi in that one 30 Rock meme? I mean, not that me and my cohorts tonight will really be able to tell, because we've got the average age of 32. But they're also selling this as a Spider-Man Iron Man team-up movie. Like, Robert Downey Jr. is in these trailers almost as much as Tom Holland is. And I get that they really want to stress, even to the casual observer, that Spider-Man is in the MCU now. Spider-Man is in the MCU now. This is not amazing, this is the MCU. I don't know how much screen time Tony Stark's actually going to have in this movie, but based on what I've seen, I really like the dynamic between the two of them. Peter Parker's kind of this annoying little twerp, and Tony Stark is this old guy who never gives him enough credit. Michael Keaton plays the villain in this, and I mean, how awesome is that? Spider-Man versus Batman. And I know this is probably too much to ask, but I really hope there's a post-credits tag revealing J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. It would screw with continuity a little bit, but it wouldn't matter because everyone would just be so happy to see him. Now, of course, this is a Sony and Marvel co-production, and Sony is kinda being dicks again. I mean, a SpiderMan Homecoming sequel has already been greenlit for summer of 2019, but now Sony is saying maybe that'll be the last Spider-Man MCU movie, which, come on. They also say they're working on their own cinematic universe again, one that's tangentially related to this one through the Spider-Man character, but it's separate from Marvel, and Marvel is separate from that, but they are connected through Tom Holland to Spider-Man, and of course, Spider-Man has shown up at Disney California Adventure as part of Summer of Heroes. And if you're wondering how that can happen, how he can be in Disney on the West Coast and Universal on the East Coast, watch my State of the Park series. In the former Muppet Vision Theater, where they usually just show film previews nowadays, they are showing something called the Summer of Heroes Showcase. They can't legally put Marvel in the title, but it's basically a Marvel Cinematic Universe greatest hits reel. Kind of like Path of the Jedi over at Tomorrowland. It's just all the best, most iconic clips from the MCU lined up in more or less chronological order, just to give us a sense of what's happened so far. And not one frame of Spider-Man. Now, that had to have been a legal thing. There's no artistic reason for them to completely leave out Spider-Man. So the question is, who's being the dicks here, Sony or Universal? It could be Sony, but on the other hand, maybe there's some legal thing in the original contracts that says Disney can't open any sort of attraction that features Spider-Man on a screen, because The Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man has Spider-Man on a screen. I don't know exactly, I don't claim to know exactly, but it's weird. And speaking of the SpiderMan ride, isn't it interesting that we are currently on our third cinematic Spider-Man, and the pre-show is still based on the old 90s Fox Kids cartoon, which, I reiterate, was canceled a year before the ride opened. Ah, what a tangled, tangled web our young Mr. Parker weaves. Let's see if this one's any good.
Did target demographic research was the last episode, and for our YouTube numbers to skyrocket, we need at least 4 schlubby white guys with beards. Yes. So I've done my part to make our rating skyrocket.
Well,
it's the only way to do it.
Well, the thing is, the movie had too many not white people in this, so in order for the internet to, in order for nerds on the internet to be happy. Yeah, it was almost like an
actual inner-city high school.
You know, I can now take the footage of you saying there were too many non-white people and use it however I like. You know, you realize that, right?
That is the least of the blackmail you have on me by now. The movie had too many not white people. The movie had too many not white people. Not white people. Not white people. The movie had too many not white people.
So you're saying I don't have enough black males on you, and never mind. We just saw Spider-Man Homecoming. I liked it. It's pretty awesome.
I liked it too.
I was promised a solid homecoming dance scene, and I never got that.
I'm looking forward to the Incredible Hulk prom.
It's kind of hard to think up new stuff to say about the MCU at this point, because just every film they make is just really good.
Like, at this point, we're waiting for a bad movie.
I think even without the larger MCU, Spider-Man Homecoming could have stood on its own.
It could have, but it would have been a very different movie because
Tony plays such a heavy role.
I think it does kind of depend a little on at least knowing who Tony Stark is. I mean, the opening of the film, without spoiling anything yet, has to do with the events of the Avengers.
It was great to see how they did that.
I think we have the most agreed upon Spider-Man ever. Because I know I'm one of the people who really likes the Amazing Spider-Man interpretation, but most people like Tobey Maguire, and I don't like that one at all. And I think
I bought Tobey Maguire as a nerd, but not as a teenager. Because he was like 30, he was in his 30s when he
was like 26.
Tobey Maguire was born 45, let's just be honest for a second.
Nothing against Andrew Garfield, he's proved that he can act, but he's...
Too pretty for the role?
He's too pretty. He's like the edgy, cool Edward Cullen version.
Yeah, Tom Holland really does capture... Like, just...
I buy him as a teenager.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I buy him as just, like, socially awkward.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he sells that better than even actually socially awkward Tobey Maguire did. Like he's just like like he stutters more than I am right now in this vlog. You can describe this Peter Parker in a few sentences without ever once even bringing up that he's Spider-Man.
When's the last time we all saw a superhero movie that's not a Guardians of the Galaxy movie that made us laugh this hard?
It was definitely one of the most overtly funny superhero movies. I mean, unless you count like Captain Underpants or something. This is definitely the funniest Spider-Man movie ever made. Yeah. There's a couple jokes here and there that don't quite land, but almost all of them do. And yeah, it's just a great damn time at the movies.
It's also the Spider-Man movie that makes the biggest push for verisimilitude. By really trying to realistically portray
in a world that still has alien technology and robots.
As realistically as you can in the established Marvel universe.
Kind of a PG-rated Daredevil, where it was trying to take this very sometimes abstract and confusing and godlike mythology and kind of bring it back down to ground level and just show people on the street trying to live out their lives and get through high school. I liked how the scenes shot in the high school were stylistically different from the scenes that showed him out doing superhero things. Like the camera was more static, there was old wood paneling and crappy lockers around.
Out of all the Spider-Men that came before this was the one that focused most on Peter's high school life, at least for the duration of the movie, because the first Sam Raimi movie, like the first part focuses a bit on high school, but then he grows up.
Well, then he's immediately not in... either he's not in high school or it's completely irrelevant at that point.
This was the one that was actually a movie on some level about, trying to fit in, trying to figure out where you're going in life when you're a high schooler, trying to figure out how to be cool and how to ask the girl to homecoming. And
then when you finally do ask the girl to homecoming, how overwhelmingly important that becomes in your life.
And also how awkward it is to be alone with her dad. There's a scene that's homaging a certain John Hughes movie, and then it just cuts to the actual scene from that John Hughes movie.
Well, seen on a TV, obviously. They don't just splice in the footage, but
they cite their sources.
Yeah, definitely. That's the cinematic bibliography right there.
They had all these high school characters, but they managed to give them distinct personalities.
Yeah, they felt like people.
Yeah.
It could have so easily felt forced.
Yeah.
It felt like all these middle-aged men making comedy for, like, this is what the kids are into.
Well,
and actually...
There was a little of that in the sense of, do kids today really care that much about 80s pop culture?
As someone who grew up in the 80s, back then they were making a lot of references to the 60s. I think it's just a thing that happens, like whatever was going on in pop culture 20 to 30 years ago,
and you get
that all those people who are currently making media grew up on, they're going to be referencing that stuff in their stuff. I mean, it's
we just had our 5th Transformers movie.
Yeah, that's
I mean, it's like, look at the Guardians of the Galaxy, it's like, oh, look, it's Peter Quill. He's an 80s kid. He's from the 80s. He's going to reference Ninja Turtles. What's the music he listens to? It's all from the 60s.
Well, it was like 70s.
But that's my point.
It's like the music his mom put together.
It's like if he was putting together his own mixtapes, they would have had Van Halen's Jump and Don't Worry, Be Happy on it. I don't know. I forget what year those movies came out. Here's where Tony puts a scroll in along the bottom saying, Don't Worry, Be Happy came out in 1993 and it's not an 80s song and Luke's a dumb idiot face. So there we go.
Don't Worry, Be Happy was a #1 jam. And it came out in 88.
Hey, I bought the single of it.
So anyway, this is out of all the Spider-Men that have come before
this. Yeah, when are we seeing a Spider-Man movie? Martin Starr playing one of my favorite characters, the, science teacher it had some of the best lines.
I loved his a little too immaculately groomed beard.
What was great about
school teacher.
That character and the science thing in general is that like they had like their nerdy decathlon team, but it's more in a modern sense where being smart doesn't inherently make you nerdy. So they have like popular kids in that group, but they're still not Peter Parker. It really felt less like a decathlon team and more like an improv group.
Was the school an advanced school of some sort?
Yeah, it was like a specific scientific-based high school. I forgot the name of it, but it's on the T-shirts they're wearing.
So that's how they still have bullies like Flash, but even the bullies are nerds.
Played by Zero from Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes.
So.
Wow, I didn't put that together until you said that.
Oh yeah, that was Zero. Which means he'll grow up to be F. Murray Abraham somehow.
But hey, who won't?
Hannibal Buress is in this movie, and he's not that funny. He gets
good jokes.
He gets to show up and just kind of be Hannibal Buress in the background of a couple of
Yeah,
scenes.
it feels less like he was cast in the movie and more like he walked on
He was
set.
the gym teacher.
They had this role in the script, and it's like, okay,
let's hire a funny person.
Let's hire someone who we
Can
know
do
is-
something with it.
who's like gonna see this and go, oh, I know exactly what to do with this, and then bam, like deliver it perfectly.
I guess he knew he wasn't going to have more than 2 minutes of screen time because
Right,
instead of
right.
going to the premiere, he just asked on Twitter for someone that looks like him to go for him.
That's right.
And then some news company interviewed him and put Hannibal Buress in like the lower thirds.
You know, in high school, I had a really tough coach. I wasn't a big fan of physical education.
We have a problem with racism, and it's all revolving around everyone looks like Hannibal Buress.
The look-alike looked about as much like Hannibal Buress as the Black Widow at DCA looks like Scarlett Johansson.
Yes.
I'm here with Hannibal Paris, Hannibal Paris, Hannibal Paris.
We've hit a point with certain of the larger name superheroes where we no longer need origin stories. And that
Yeah.
makes me
Yes.
happy.
Yeah.
As much as everyone poo-poos, Ben Affleck's Batman, no origin story. He's Batman. If you don't know Batman, what are you doing here?
Although
you know,
they showed Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot again.
Thomas and Martha Wayne get
well, yeah, I mean,
because they
it's
couldn't resist because
Yeah,
Zack
but-
Snyder's
yeah,
like,
but they didn't.
artsy murder.
But they
Yeah.
didn't.
Gimme.
Because how else would you know why he was saying that name?
Why are you saying that name?
They were getting off topic, guys.
The origin story is briefly mentioned in this, like, yeah, I got bit by a spider, the spider's dead now, but, but they trust us, you know who Spider-Man is.
It would have been so easy for them to put some reference to Uncle Ben actually
Yeah.
in
Right.
the dialogue, but they always sort of nudge around it.
They dance around it in both this and in Civil War, and and here it's like after. Like Peter just says, after all, Aunt May's been through, and that's kind of the one hint.
Well, in Civil War, he had that one line that was the really clunky version of "With great power comes," where he says, when you don't do the things that you should have done and bad things happen, that's on you, or something like that.
Yes, but I mean, it
Needs a copy editor. We don't actually know what happened with Uncle Ben yet. Is it even explicitly stated that Uncle Ben existed in this universe?
It's heavily implied. Instead, it's Vulture who gets the origin story.
Right.
And so, I mean, he's the bad guy, but because you've kind of been with him since the beginning, you understand what's at stake for him.
Vulture's origin was great. It was like fast track, getting to the point. Here's who this guy is and why he's doing what he's doing. Boom, let's get into the movie.
We finally have a Marvel movie villain who's not Loki, who isn't a disposable just goon.
he's not a bad person. He's doing these things for these reasons. But what really makes, I think, just the visual work of having Vulture be the villain is you've got a bird fighting a bug.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's an arachnid, but birds will still eat spiders. Well,
Michael Keaton has a long list of roles he needs to play where he's a human tied to an animal thing that flies.
Can I say one thing that I was a little iffy on in this movie?
Mm-hmm.
It was how high-tech the suit was, and about how many... And I get that they were going for a plot point where Peter's immediately playing with all the new gadgets, but as a result, while he had that suit, it felt a little bit more like an Iron Man movie.
the suit is given by Stark, so it makes sense for the suit to have those things.
Yeah.
And I actually also appreciate that we have a Spider-Man who can't make a good suit for once.
Just because this movie is set in a world where Iron Man exists, it can't ignore Stark technology. And so this movie does have long sequences where he's playing with Tony Stark toys. But that's why I think the third act was all about him learning how to be Spider-Man without the toys. If you're a fan of just Spider-Man and not a fan of the larger Marvel Universe, you'll probably be more appreciative of the earlier versions where it's just Spider-Man learning to be Spider-Man and not Spider-Man learning how to be Iron Man's buddy Spider-Man. The whole drive of Spidey to want to join the Avengers is pretty clear homage to all the fans' desire for Spidey to join the Avengers.
Yeah, I bet
and
Sony
be in these
loved
movies.
that.
Tony Stark is constantly trying to undo everything that is wrong with the past, and his way of let's fix that is by being Iron Man. Whereas Peter Parker is like, I am Spider-Man, therefore I have to do these things.
The director, John Watts, has only done a couple of small indie movies up to now, but he's a talent. He really, he's going places.
Well, that was also true of Mark Webb, and John Watts has done a much better job than Mark Webb so
definitely
far.
the better indie pull.
I mean, we shouldn't hire directors based on their last name's pun with the movie?
well, there was electricity in this movie, so John Watts.
There you go.
Seems to be run on some form of electricity.
It should have been about Electro.
The cinematography in this was probably the best they've had outside of Guardians. There was so much thought put into the visuals of the movie in a way that is not put into even most of the MCU films outside of Guardians, and Guardians has that free reign because they're in space. They have a lot of great scripts in those movies, but they kind of falter the visuals a little bit, which happens to be because a lot of their directors either direct lower budget movies, or like Joss Whedon is a TV director, so he's used to not being able to experiment much outside of TV lighting. But I don't know what John Watts, what he did that made such a big difference, because he is, an indie director. But he knew what he wanted to do.
Maybe that was Sony's influence, because for all their problems, from what I haven't actually seen the Amazing Spider-Man movies, but from the trailers, those movies look great.
Yeah, they're very pretty.
Maybe it was Sony who insisted they bring a real DP onto it or something. No J. Jonah Jameson, sadly.
Here's the thing, I don't think we're ever going to get J. Jonah Jameson.
Yeah.
Which is sad, because once Spidey becomes an adult, he's probably the most central figure in the conflicts of his life and the duality of his life.
Well, that's kind of what I mean. I don't think we're ever going to get to an adult Spidey.
That's possible.
I feel like we're probably going to stick in high school, and then by the time he would go off to go be J. Jonah Jameson and go to college, he's probably going to bite the dust and they'll bring in Miles.
Or they'll just reboot it again.
J.K. Simmons was so perfect and iconic as J. Jonah that nobody else could ever play him.
No one else could ever play him.
It's true.
But you bring him back.
Well, of course.
If Dame Judi Dench can start playing M in the Pierce Brosnan era and continue through the Daniel Craig era, why not?
Yeah.
Donald Glover is in this movie.
Yes.
who for a long time had a huge fan campaign to play Miles Morales.
Which he claims he was doing more as a joke than anything else, but people took it seriously, and
my understanding
Spider-Man can't be black.
Acknowledging the fandom's want for Donald Glover to be in a Spider-Man movie, and my personal want to make sure every Marvel movie has at least one Community cast member in it.
Danny Pudi was in Winter Soldier, and then
Joel McHale was in Spider-Man 2.
There's that. But
he was the original.
Well, and Jim Rash, of course, was
Jim Rash in Civil War.
Caddyshack was in the cinematic universe, right? Chevy Chase was in
There we go.
Please let the actress who plays Britta show up in Justice League. Just so she can Britta.
Go to your room. They've retroactively decreed that Peter Parker is in Iron Man 2.
That's right.
There's a scene where all of those, flying drone evil things are, and then a little kid wearing an Iron Man mask who holds up a little light. That kid is Peter Parker.
Oh.
And then Iron Man flies in and says good work, kid, and he flies away.
Okay.
That's
retcon away. Sony can make whatever non-MCU Spider-Man movie they want.
Yeah,
but they can't put Spider-Man in them.
Yeah, they're planning certain things. I know they're planning a Venom movie, and it's going to exist inside their Sony cinematic universe.
And there's been speculation, I don't know if there's been actual basis to rumors, but there's been speculation that these will be overlapping cinematic universes, so that the events in Spider-Man Homecoming will be canon in the events of Venom, but the events of Venom won't be canon in the events of Infinity War. You have to then treat Spider-Man Homecoming as if it's a real thing as if it's Watergate, because the events of Watergate are canon in a lot of different fictional universes.
Amy, whoever's in charge of Sony just needs to
just stop.
Yeah.
Just let Marvel handle it. They've got this. Let the adults, it's adult time.
Look, Sony, you finally made a good Smurfs movie, okay? Take that victory and run with it.
I'll take your word for that.
Okay, Luke.
Well, It couldn't have been that good, or we called it Smurf.
All right, you see the bright shiny light here.
Yes.
You see the bright
Yes.
here. Follow the light.
Yes.
Follow the light.
Yes.
Yes. Come on, get off
The
the
part
ground.
of Luke Ski will be played
Follow
by
the
Tony
light.
Katz in a Luke Ski suit.
And that is the downside of Marvel. We're now talking about all these other things besides the movie because the movie was good.
The movie
was
is a
fun.
Marvel movie.
It's a Marvel
fun.
movie. You're gonna see it anyway. You're gonna have a good time. It's
Yeah.
very funny. I don't think it was as good as the first two Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies especially. I think Spider-Man 2 is still kind of the high watermark.
Well, yeah.
I'll need to see it again.
There's
before I
nothing
do
in this movie as good as the elevated streetcar scene in Spider-Man 2.
They were definitely evoking the streetcar scene in the ferry scene.
Well, they were evoking that and the ferry scene in the first one. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us.
They were sort of
that
evoking both at once, but specifically pulling together with the Jesus pose was very evocative of being at the front of the train.
I think this is far and away the best Spider-Man movie. I appreciate that they managed to find heart without making it cheesy. If that makes sense. Like
I kind of like the cheesiness in the first two.
I don't do cheese. I like my cheese on my sandwiches.
What are you doing hanging out with us?
Yeah. That's cheese. This is corn. Well, I'm sure there is an audience for the people who are like, you mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. I look at that and I'm just like, I don't buy that for a second.
It was after 9/11.
It was right after 9/11.
Yeah.
Look, I know you were like 3 at the time.
Well, more accurately, Spider-Man 2, like, there's a train of people who, like, see his mask off and they're like, we won't tell anybody. There's 50 people in that car.
Well, they won't tell Vultures who are protecting him because he saved them.
Yeah.
There's no way they could know who he was anyway, and this was just before everybody had a camera in their phone.
Best post-credit scene since the first Guardians.
Yes. Stay for the post-credit scene. Shall we go into spoiler space?
Yep.
Spoiler man.
Spoiler
man.
Does whatever a spoiler can.
But wait, I haven't seen the movie yet.
Today's episode, Spidey meets the spoilers.
I love how incompetent Spider-Man is in this movie. Like they get so many laughs and so much mileage out of just him not having any idea what the hell he's doing for like the first half of the movie.
Thing that I was going to get to. The part that bothered me is that he simultaneously has no idea what he's doing, but at the same time, he and his friend can hack into Stark.
Well, they're good hackers, but they're not,
They don't have a lot of real-world experience.
Exactly. I don't know if Patton Oswalt did guest writing on this movie like he often does, like punch-up work, but they used one of the first jokes Patton Oswalt ever wrote. I forget where I heard him say this, but one of the first jokes he ever wrote as a stand-up comedian was an impression of Spider-Man in Iowa.
Yes.
And they kind of did that joke.
They
Like
did.
there's a point where he has to like run through a field where there's no tall buildings anywhere. There's no trees, no tall buildings, and then sprinklers go off.
The only thing that would have made that scene better if they would have cut to the side and there's Deadpool like.
The voice of Peter's robot suit, Jennifer Connelly.
Yep.
Oh, nice.
So I kept waiting for her to, rebel against Peter and go, "You have no power over me." And then of course, the elevator scene, which is so great, and that's what they should have replaced the Tower of Terror with.
Oh man.
That fits in perfectly, but I guess
I feel like if you did that, you'd have to have the screen on the ceiling.
Yeah, that's true.
I did like the bait and switch they pulled with the female characters because there's no explicit Gwen Stacy or Mary Jane Watson.
Michelle, played by Zendaya,
turns out to have the initials
MJ. Yeah, which
there was an explicit Betty Brant.
See how far they take.
Yeah, there was an explicit Betty Brant. Yeah,
who's Betty Brant?
The High School News announcements. The girl was Betty Brant.
Oh, okay. So I missed
that's
that.
clever because Betty Brant eventually goes on to be an employee of the Daily Bugle.
She goes on to be Elizabeth Banks' character from the Raimi trilogy.
Yeah.
Speaking of the Raimi trilogy, there were a lot of deliberate homages, I thought. Well, at least one big one that I noticed where it's during the elevator scene and it's Peter and Liz and one of them is upside down and his machine just says, "Kiss her, Peter."
Yeah.
Like, I see what you did there. I see what you did there. There's a scene in the movie where these teens are playing fuck, marry, kill with the Avengers, but they can't actually say fuck. They have to say, it's like, do it or don't do it.
I thought you could say fuck once and get a PG-13.
Not in a sexual context.
Ah.
You can say what the fuck, which...
We almost did.
Which Aunt May almost did at the end. Oh my god, Captain America was so goddamn great in this movie.
Chris Evans, you magnificent bastard, you.
Between this and Thor the Dark World, Chris Evans is becoming their best cameo guy.
Yeah.
Like, the best scene in Thor the Dark World was Chris Evans' cameo. He's just the ultimate Boy Scout.
Yeah.
You know, doing
I'm pretty sure this guy's a war criminal now, but we still gotta show these tapes.
Exactly.
Just doing his PSA obligations.
He's still doing that same USO show.
Yeah. The first scene with Vulture basically, pre-Vulture, basically looking out over the wreckage of the Battle of New York shortly after it happens, that's that first Bruce Wayne scene of Batman v Superman done right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Our very first frame of being introduced to him, he's showing off a drawing his daughter made. So instantly they're setting up the care he has for his family.
Years ago, I heard that Marvel was trying to develop a show called Damage Control about the people who clean up after the Avengers and all that stuff, and I guess it never happened. I guess Powerless kind of stole its thunder a little, but now that's canceled. It's established that Adrian Toomes does not work for Damage Control. He works for a company, he has his own company that kind of got steamrollered over by Damage Control, but still, it's the first time in the Marvel Cinematic Universe where we've kind of seen that angle of it, at least in one of the movies, where we've seen, okay, who actually cleans up this shit? You know, while the Avengers are off getting shawarma. There's a scene where he's mad at one of his henchmen, and he means to basically hit him with the anti-gravity ray, and instead he hits him with a disintegrator ray and fucking kills him, and he's like, I didn't mean to kill him. What the?
It's like, I thought this was the gravity gun.
That's over there. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he doesn't cry over it, but that henchman had also basically just threatened to blackmail him.
Yeah. The scene is presented exactly like the scene in these movies that are like, this shows how bad the bad guy is and how he'll stop at nothing and how he'll even kill his own henchmen. And here it's like, oh shit, I killed my own henchman.
Because we don't know that he doesn't know that that's the wrong weapon until afterwards. And so it just gives him this great moment of, oh, this is the wrong weapon? Oh, it's that one. He goes, oh. Alright, I guess I killed that guy.
This is also...
I'm a murderer now. Who knew?
This is also after we see Spider-Man literally save a cat.
Yeah.
So this movie knows its screenwriting tropes.
Tony Stark had a really interesting character. And I think that's how they keep getting him back, is they keep giving him new stuff to chew on. In Civil War, it was very heavily about trying to undo all the things I did wrong. And now in Spider-Man, it's like, I'm trying to be the man my father was secretly. I didn't find out that he really did care until after he was gone, so now I'm trying to be that with the closest thing I'll probably ever have to a son, which is Peter.
It'll be Robert Downey Jr.
So Liz's dad is the Vulture, aka Adrian Toomes.
That was a fantastic reveal.
That was the best scene in the movie.
I did not see that coming.
Well, I saw it coming like a couple of seconds before it actually happened, because it seemed like it was a little too much build-up just to meet some girl's dad.
As Peter's walking up the March of Doom to her front door, and I'm thinking, Vulture's gonna open it, he will have taken Liz hostage, and this is gonna be a big, and it's gonna be like the Green Goblin all over again. And
they were playing with those expectations.
They were playing with those expectations, because he opens the door and he smiles sinisterly, and he's like, "Hi, Peter," and Peter's like,
It was kind of like the Green Goblin again, in the sense that he was the dad of someone Peter was close to.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but that was a twist. They didn't reveal that outright. And the Vulture doesn't know at first.
He doesn't know.
He has no clue.
No, he's just doing a macho thing to kind of.
Well, that's
push at his.
He just got all the dad jokes.
Exactly. But the scene in the car where she's saying all this stuff and he's putting it together in his mind, and you can tell exactly what he's thinking using only his amazing Michael Keaton eyebrow acting.
Well, what's especially great.
That's the best scene in the movie.
That's just as the acting in that scene is so strong. Like you can see him sort of figure out. Like, okay, this kid's been weird all night. What's going on?
And you see the red light turn green, and it lights on his face, and that's the moment where you can tell he goes, Oh!
Yeah.
So they basically just shy of put a light bulb over his head. Miles Morales came to be Spider-Man after Peter Parker in his, I think he's like 29 in the comics, dies. And so Miles Morales takes up the Spider-Man mantle to like honor Peter Parker. Donald Glover didn't really do much in this movie.
Right.
It was a weird kind of waste of a very talented actor.
It seemed like they were saving him for more future movies.
But what's interesting about Donald Glover, though, is he mentions, I have a nephew who lives here. I have a sister who has a child who could very well be Miles Morales.
I'm a little bummed that, they've moved out of Avengers Tower, because I like that as a location, but from a story point of view, it would make sense that Tony Stark would want to move their headquarters away from the big populated city.
The climax of this movie literally involves a plane careening into New York City. And
that crossed my mind.
By the way, it's interesting that Wonder Woman came out this summer, but this was the film with an invisible jet.
Yeah. That crossed my mind.
How do you know the invisible jet wasn't in Wonder Woman?
Oh! Got me there. The action scenes in this, I thought, varied a little, because sometimes they were really great, and sometimes I couldn't tell what the hell was going on.
The final action sequence with the plane and everything, I thought was a little too chaotically shot.
It could be just because we were sitting really close.
I get it if they were trying to go for the confusion Peter's feeling there.
We're used to seeing, bigger fight scenes. Usually they're like city levelers. We had a Captain Winter Soldier was a fight through a building as the building's crumbling around DC.
Yeah, but you could still shoot it in a less spatially confusing way. It's actually easier in a smaller fight, I think, to make it less spatially confusing.
There's a whole thing that comes up twice where the suit is just like instant kill mode, and he's like, no. And that, comes up at the end. The Vulture's about to accidentally commit suicide.
Yeah.
And Peter Parker is just like, nope. So even though this dude was trying to kill him by dropping a building on him not 15 minutes ago in the movie.
If he died, then Liz would have lost her father.
I don't even think it's about the father thing. I think it's really just
that he values human life,
It's just that Peter isn't a murderer, which is something the MCU doesn't have, actually, until now.
Like a non-murderer?
Yeah, because Iron Man blew up people in a tank.
Yeah.
Captain America was a soldier, so he killed tons of people. Thor is a warrior in Asgard, so killing people is like their moral code. Hulk is a Hulk. None of them are openly like, let's kill everyone!
Yeah.
But I mean, Spider-Man is the first one who I think who really does actively try to make sure even his enemy doesn't die at the end of it.
Big character returned to the Iron Man.
Yeah, Pepper Potts.
Pepper Potts, Gwyneth Paltrow is back.
Gwyneth Paltrow's crazy ass showed up in this movie.
She had third billing in the end credits.
Yeah,
that was some Mark Hamill in Force Awakens shit.
Yeah.
She must have gotten a good contract,
yeah.
but it's got my hopes up that we
back.
will finally get to see Rescue in a future MCU movie.
Well,
I really wanted to see that.
I feel like the closest you're gonna get is Iron Man 3, where Iron Man's suit gets on her for 5 minutes in that movie.
Well, she said that it was shooting that scene that made her really start pushing for Rescue because the boys, she says they're always complaining about having to wear the Iron Man stuff, and I guess all that wellness is good for something because she was sitting there all zen and meditating, and she's like, I can be in this suit all day. You guys are wimps.
There's a great article on Goop about how to fit in your Iron Man suit.
Yes.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like the only reason they got her in this movie was that her vagina eggs weren't selling very well.
The cynical part of me thinks that maybe they just wanted Tony Stark and Pepper Potts to have something resembling a happy ending before Tony Stark dies in Infinity War, which is probably going to happen, sorry.
Yeah.
What used to be called Infinity War Part 2 now has no title.
Right.
And supposedly the reason for that is because the title of Infinity War Part 2 spoils what happens in Infinity War Part 1.
Okay.
Which makes me wonder if that does happen and the title's something that alludes to someone dying in the first.
So the title of Infinity War Part 2 is just Avengers. Remember how Tony Stark totally died?
The rumor that I've heard through the grapevine is that Marvel has no solidified plans for Phase 4 outside of those two movies.
Yeah.
And my assumption, just knowing what I know about how Marvel operates, they wanted to wait to see how well Spider-Man Homecoming does, and then go to Fox and be like, hey, you've got a family we need. We're going into a Phase 4, and we really want Phase 4 to be fantastic.
Yeah.
Could you help us make our fantastic Phase 4?
Dare I say, Fan-4-stick. No, I daren't say that. No, what was I thinking?
I'm sorry, for a second I thought you hinted that there might ever be a good Fantastic Four movie, and that's just crazy.
There is! It's called The Incredibles! Ha 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 ha!
At the very end, he's offered, like, hey, we're basically forming the Sinister Six, wink wink nudge nudge, can you tell us who to kill to get to Spider-Man? But Adrian Toomes, who had his life saved by Peter Parker, and, Peter wasn't doing anything against his family, he was just doing his job, essentially. Yeah. He goes, I don't know who he is. And that's not what he actually says. He has a better delivery than that. But
if I knew who he was, he'd already be dead.
It's such a great thing to let you know that Michael Keaton does not have the patience to do another MCU movie.
Am I racist, or was that Nacho from Better Call Saul?
It is.
Cool.
It makes me...
You still might be racist, but...
Sure, why not?
They really heavily set up
that he's going to be the big bad in
that's Matt Gargan, the Scorpion.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's what. And actually, if you look on his neck in his scene, he's got a scorpion tattoo.
Gotcha. All right.
So that's what I got really excited when I heard them say we can still do the Gargan deal, because I was like, fuck yes, because the Scorpion is a great villain.
So the only question that remains to be asked is, what's the attraction? Now, of course, this is an interesting case because, of course, the Amazing Adventures of SpiderMan Ride in Universal's Islands of Adventure exists.
Right.
But on the West Coast, Disneyland has Spider-Man, specifically DCA, but they can't use Spider-Man in any film segment, so I guess this can involve Disney and Universal, or either or whatever you want. What's the new Homecoming-based Spider-Man attraction? Zachary!
They're going to open a Spider-Man ride here in California at Disneyland. They're going to reopen the People Movers. But instead of it being you in a car, in like a tram or like a little basket, you will just be hooked in a harness to a Vulture suit, and they will fly you through while hooked. And you'll just dangle like a worm on the Vulture's claws.
Sounds great. Dave!
Okay, so it's going to be for Amazing Adventures of Spider-Man in Universal Islands of Adventure. The ride's going to stay the same, except they're going to add to the safety video pre-show Captain America turning a chair around, sitting down, and saying, "So, you're in line for a ride." Also a meet and greet with the fake Hannibal Buress lookalike outside.
I will just accept Captain America hosting every ride pre-show.
So, your cadaverous pallor betrays an arrow from a boating. I know what that disquieting metamorphosis feels like, believe you me.
Look, kids, I know it seems cool to stand up and keep your hands and legs outside of the vehicle.
Take it from a man who was presumed dead for decades. We tell no tales.
It's a world of laughter, a world of fears. It's a world... No.
Take it from...
That's strike 3. And now,
out of impossible 17 and a half. It's not going to be at Disney World or Disneyland. It's not going to be at the Universal Studios Parks. It's going to be the new Coney Island Flaming Wreckage Playground. That's where it is, everybody. That's the attraction.
Morgan!
It's going to be the homecoming dance.
Aww.
Just every night there's a homecoming dance.
Just every night. Like, it's going to be a
retheme
of the Mad Tea Party or whatever it is now, except it's going to be the Spider-Man Homecoming dance. And
then Julie Brown bursts in with a gun, and then it's... Never mind.
But the twist is, to get into the dance, you need to have a long and very awkward conversation with your date's dad.
Yep.
Yes.
Zach, will you go to DCA Homecoming with me?
My father's dead.
Well, that'll shorten that part then.
Well, as usual, you're all wrong.
What?
Actually, Luke stole my Coney Island idea, so that's...
So Luke's right.
So
I'm completely right.
Well,
but no, you're all wrong, because you have to be wrong, because that's how this works.
Okay.
And what they're going to do is they're going to put you in a computer lab and strap you to a chair, and they're going to just spin you around because you're the guy in the chair, And that's all that Luke stole mine! God damn it! Never mind.
Their new rides are going to be just office chairs. And
Yes.
you get to spin around in them as much as you want.
And your parents will say, "This is Disneyland, sweetie. Don't you like it?" So until next time, ladies and gentlemen, sling us a web, you're the Spider-Man. Sling us a web tonight. 'Cause Michael Keaton's flying around as a birdie man. And he's got a big
Oscar inside.
Why not? Da 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 da.
It stays relevant through several reboots.
Spiders.
The movie had too many not white people. The movie had too many not white people. Not white people. Not white people. The movie had too many not white people. White people. White people. The movie had too many not white people. White people. White people. White people.
Gee, I'm so glad there isn't any other popular song parodies about Spider-Man.
Yeah, me too.
Now Peter Parker, Zen and Barker, known as Spider-Man.
Spaying and neutering. It's a thing that people do. This is Captain America saying you totally shouldn't do that. And now I'm going.
Okay, quick, save that cat from the deli.
No, that's Captain America.
I am the King of Night.